Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to these self knowledge lectures. Today, we are going to be having the lecture number 35 of the self knowledge course, in which we are going to give some important explanations about family and attachments. So, in today's topic, we are going to reflect on the conflicts that arise from our misconceptions about family and how these misconceptions can affect the development of the inner work that we are doing. And we are also going to examine how attachments and emotional dependence that we create, around things, around people, and that we often mistake for love can actually lead to stagnation and conflicts on that inner work. And well, remember that this is a free self-knowledge course consisting of 50 topics on its phase A, 25 topics on its phase B. Remember that this is a completely free knowledge. And if you want to be part of our WhatsApp or our Telegram groups where we share these videos and where we also share complementary material on each of these topics, you can find the link to join our groups here in the description of this video, and then you can receive the full self-knowledge course. That even though we finish with the cycle of 50 lectures, we continue with the phase B, and when we end the phase B, we restart from the first lecture of this self-knowledge course. So you can join our groups at any point of the cycle of conferences. And well, let's start this important lecture by understanding that we all have three families. The first family is connected to the external world, where we find our physical body and where we find our personality. And this is the physical family. You know that it includes our father, mother, siblings, partner, right? Children, uncles, grandparents, and so on. And the second family that we all have is a psychological family. And this family is related to our soul, to what is also known as the mind and as our energy. And this family is what we call our internal world. And our psychological family is made up of all of our egos, of all of our different negative ways of being. Because 97% of our essence, of our energy, what is our mind, right? What is our soul, is trapped there within all those negative ways of being that are actually our psychological family. And we also have a real family. And this one belongs to our spirit or consciousness. And it is what we can call like the inner world of that internal world that we all have, right? And this family is made up of the 3% of free consciousness that we all possess, which is our true spirit. And to this 3%, or real family, we are going to be adding all the essences that we rescue from the psychological jail, right? Through the work of psychological death. Since each one of those negative ways of being or psychological defects has inside a pure and a real part, which is actually a part of a real family. So we are going to like it to be rescuing the several parts of a real family when we work on our psychology. And well, those are the three families that we all have. So let's begin by explaining each one of them in detail. And let's begin with the physical family. We know that every one of us needs a physical body in order to exist in this physical plane and to carry out the work of our being. Because this work can only be carried out, we can only have all the experiences from which we are going to rescue all the wisdom our inner being needs in the duality that is expressed here in this physical dimension, in all the experiences that we have through our different lives or existences. And we also know that human beings are at birth totally defenseless, right? And for that reason, we need a mother to take care of us until we're able to survive on our own. We need that person. And this shows us the necessity and the importance of having a physical family. But we also know that according to the law of return, every soul has the right to live in 108 human physical bodies. So that when we come in one cycle on the wheel of samsara, and we reach the human kingdom, we have that right to come 108 times. So throughout all our existences, we'll have 108 mothers, right? And 108 fathers. And if we actually take a moment to reflect on this, and if we learn to also investigate our past life in the astral world, we are going to see that in each of our past existences, we have always had fathers, mothers, partners, siblings, children. And then by realizing this, we can ask ourselves, which of those 108 mothers is our real mother? Which of those 108 fathers is our real father? And among the thousands of brothers and sisters that we have had in all of those existences, who are our true siblings? And this is a very important question to meditate upon. And the truth is that the people in our physical family are actually just connected to us by genetic bonds from past existences. We usually share with them certain like karmic commitments, certain like karmic debts, we might say, that are the ones that make us come together in one existence as family. And it is very common for that reason for us to reincarnate or to return what is actually what we do within the seed of our own descendants. Okay, allow me just a second to fix something here in the broadcast. I mean, in this link, and we're going to continue. And well, we tend to return in the seeds of our descendants, and we must understand that our parents are in reality just brothers who have helped us by giving us this physical body as a payment for a past existence in which we give them the opportunity to incarnate, to return, by providing them with a body, right? And in the very same way, we then have children, right? And when we have children, we are doing the same. We are just paying for the physical bodies that we have once received. But in every existence, we had a different mother, a different father, different brothers. Maybe someone who was a brother in another existence is now our father or our mother, or maybe someone who was a partner of us in another existence is now our children, is now our cousin, is now our grandparent, and so on. That is the reality that we realize when we start awakening our consciousness and we actually start investigating in the internal world our past existences. And well, actually, there is another very important aspect of the physical family, perhaps the most important of all, and that is our partner. Because we know that to reproduce the species, it is necessary to have a partner, right? But beyond reproduction, what's most essential is that the creation of the existential bodies of the being happens through sex, right? And for that sacred we actually need a partner. Yeah. And our partner then is not just a romantic figure, but a brother or a sister who collaborates with us in that great work of self-realization. And we in turn are actually collaborating with that person to achieve that same goal. Then there we can also like understand the value of having a physical family. And in the same way, our children are also our brothers, souls to whom we are given the opportunity to have a physical existence. And through this, they could begin the work of experiencing here in this physical plane. And if receiving the knowledge, they can also use the existence to achieve the self-realization, right? We tend to believe that our children are ours because we gave them birth, because we gave them shelter, food, but that is not true. They are sparks of divinity. They are souls. They do not belong to anyone. They are just our brothers, as all human beings are, but we have with those sparks a certain responsibility of providing them care, education, shelter, protection until they are able to stand on their own and to build their own homes, right? However, most of us call brothers, sisters, only those who were born from the same mother as we were, or that live in our same, I don't know, home. While we see others in the street, for example, as totally strangers, simply because they were not born in our house. And what we fail to understand is that everyone in this world is actually our brother or sister. Our home is not limited to the walls of our house because the entire planet Earth is our home. And all the inhabitants of these planets are sparks that emanated from the sacred absolute sun, and we have all come here for the very same purpose to gain wisdom through the experience of duality, and therefore our true home is actually the whole planet right now. Our source is the sacred absolute sun, but right now we are all living in this house that is the planet Earth. And then our true family is all the beings who live upon this planet Earth. And the love that we currently feel for our children, for our parents, for our siblings, for our partner must be extended to all humanity. We must broaden our capacity to love so that just as we try to help the members of our physical family in many ways, we also strive to help all human beings, especially by giving them the opportunity to awaken their consciousness, giving them the tools so they can fulfill the true purpose of their existence, right? Which is the self-realization of their being. But the attachment that we create towards the member of a physical family actually prevent us from seeing this greater truth. It blinds us to the reality that all human beings are our brothers and sisters, and that beyond that universal bond, there is no other title or distinction. Okay? And well, that is the physical family. Let's now analyze a little the psychological family. This internal family is made up of elements that we call I's or egos, psychological defects, and there are like the main psychological defects, but actually they are many, and they are the many different ways of being that exist within us. We have I's of all kind. They can be actually summarized in the seven causal I's or seven deadly sins, sloth, greed, lust, pride, anger, gluttony, and envy that live inside of us. But each of those seven is in itself a whole legion of smaller I's, many detailed forms of expression of those egos. And well, as Virgil, the Mantuan poet, once said, even if we had a plate of steel and 1,000 tongues, we couldn't list them completely. We have no idea of the multiplicity of egos, of ways of being that live inside of us and that manifest through our energy centers from moment to moment. And each of these defects contains inside themselves a certain percentage of our trapped essence, which is actually what gives them life. They are formed and they grow through all the energy that they manage to absorb every time that we allow them to manifest through our energy centers. Every time we allow a defect to manifest through our emotions, making us feel this or that, I don't know, anxiety, anguish, like we are in love, and so on. Every time that we give them place for they expressing our emotion, they are stealing emotional energy. When we let them take our minds and start thinking, planning, projecting, and so on, fantasizing, they are actually feeding our mental energy. Every time that we give them our sex for them to make us feel that sexual energy, actually all of them grow and reproduce because of the power of their energy. right? And well, actually, the sum of all these defects is what we call our psychological family or our internal world. And the greatest problem with this internal family is that they have imprisoned our consciousness. They manage, misuse, and they drain the different energies of our different centers. And that is why it is essential to constantly practice self observation, to be at all times directing our attention to our inner world, to discover all those defects in our thoughts, in our emotions, in our actions, in the words we say, in our sexual impulses, and even in all the tensions that we feel in the body, because the stress that we feel is actually a psychological defect there. They're making us feel that tension. Because through that tension, they are draining our energy, making us distract ourselves. That is a defect. All the sensations that we actually experience in our body are moved by a psychological defect that is there in our instinctive center. Let's say that recorded as certain sensation that is going to make us lose our energy, surrender to a certain desires. And in all the desires that we feel there, if we self-observe, we can discover all those psychological defects that are the ones that are preventing us, from being a conscious being, right? And once a defect has been discovered and understood, by self observation and by judging ourselves, it must be eliminated from our interior. And how we do so? Well, through appetition to the force of love of our unconsciousness that we can call our divine mother, so that she may free the consciousness and may free all the energy that is trapped within that defect. We just have to mentally ask that powerful force of our consciousness, my mother, eliminate this defect for me, and we are going to experience how powerful that prayer actually is. And well, this internal family was actually created through the misuse of our creative sexual energy. The very first time that humanity fell into fornication, or try that forbidden fruit, that is actually fornication. Fornication is expelling the sexual energy through orgasm and ejaculation. Before that, humanity used to transmute their sexual energy. That was the normal, a form of sexuality. But as soon as a couple fell in fornication, uh, reaching orgasm and ejaculation, that is fornication, they formed the original sin, right? And that original sin was the creation through fornication of the seven causal selves or eyes or egos that we have inside. And each time that we continue fornicating during our several existences, we continue creating more and more defects, right? We are going to explain this in detail actually in the lecture number 50 of the phase A, where we are going to talk about the origin of the ego. Now, what we need to know is that also when we fail to transform all the impressions that we receive each day, uh, obviously due to lack of awareness, due to lack of self-observation and concentration, we fall into giving our energy to these defects. And what they do, they multiply with that energy that we give them. And over time, we have created within ourselves an enormous legion of psychological defects within ourselves. That is this psychological family. These defects includes all our vices, all our desires, errors, sufferings, pleasures, all our reactions, and the truth is that they are dearer to us than even our own physical family or even our children. And we can easily verify this by observing how easily we sacrifice the physical or psychological well-being of our loved ones just to satisfy the desires of our defects. We see people who, to feed a vice, for example, actually abandon their children. Others who, in defending their pride, they destroy their relationships, or those who prefer to humiliate a child rather than restraining their anger or their tyranny, for example. And then you can see what we give the most importance to. We continuously feed our violent, our negative tendencies, even doing harm to others with those harmful, tendencies, right? So not only do we refuse to deny our defects, we defend them. We justify them. We say, "I am like this," and we feed them as we please. And that is the depth of our attachment to all our psychological defects. As we advance in the work of psychological death, we are going to see and verify this attachment that we have towards a certain psychological defects into what then is that attachment that make us suffer when we need to eliminate one of those defects. And they are defects which we are so deeply attached that we enter into crisis when we decide to eliminate them. However, we must understand that only by eliminating all those defects we will be able to free and to integrate the third type of family. That is the one that we are going to analyze now. That is the real family. And we call it the real family because it has always existed and it will always exist. It is actually our spirit, our inner being. It is the inner world of our internal world, as I was saying before. And this family is made up of the many parts of our beings. And actually, all of them are like unfoldings or emanations of our inner father. Because God, where God lives, is inside ourselves. And actually, that God that is inside ourselves is our real family. And for example, God as Father represents our wisdom. It actually has its seat here in the pineal gland. And God as Mother is actually our essence. It's the raw material of our being. It is the creative energy of the Holy Spirit. And it is the expression at the same time of divine love. Sorry, no law. And God as Son, that is here. Sorry. I'm sorry. God as Son symbolizes justice. Yeah. And it is actually our psychological trainer, which is the giver of light and of fire, which is wisdom and love. Those are like the three primary forces, right? Of our inner being. But these ones unfold within us into three others. For example, we have then Atman, who is our intimate, which is like our inner warrior. We also have Buddhi, which is our divine soul, which is our inner Valkyrie. And we have Manas, who is our Christic will, which is the word, which is our human soul. But there are also many other parts of our being, such as the intimate Christ, such as the 12 apostles that are actually parts of our inner being, parts of our inner father or wisdom that we find inside ourselves, like for example, the 24 elders, and many others. And all of them are like divine aspects or sacred fragments of our inner real being. And as we work with the three factors and the revolution of consciousness in us like progresses, then the integration of our inner being begins. So through the elimination of our psychological defects, all the sparks of consciousness that were trapped within the ego are gradually freed. And these liberated essences are going to reunite and integrate as we work on the sacred sexuality, forming what we call the sacred individuality. So in the end, all these divine parts will merge into one perfect and luminous unity, or our real being, right? And well, now that we have explained, the three types of family, let's now look at the topic of attachments. Let's analyze what are we attached to, Why do we tend to confuse attachment with love? And on what our attachments are truly based, right? And well, let's take a moment to reflect deeply on all of this. Let's first talk about what is attachment. Actually, attachment is like an emotional or affective bond that extends over time. And we can observe it, for example, in the emotional like connection that we formed as children with certain favorite toys. And we didn't want anyone else to touch them, and we cried when we lost them. That is like the beginning of the attachment. And in the same way, throughout our lives, we have created emotional bonds with everything and everyone that give us pleasure, with everything that we call mine. We create attachments to what? To our mother, our father, our home, our money, our partner, our children, our comforts, our things, our cell phones, everything, right? And we believe that what we feel toward these people or toward these things is love. However, it is not love because attachment always leads to suffering, while true love never ever causes suffering, since it is a virtue of our consciousness. Whenever someone lives with attachments, they inevitably suffer. Attachment and suffering are directly connected. If we are attached to something, we are going to suffer when we lose it. Deep down, we all feel like this constant inner emptiness, and an emptiness that actually began when we lost true love within ourselves by becoming like disconnected to our real family, to our inner being. Then we started feel empty, and because of that emptiness we are unhappy, and in search for fulfillment, we cling to people, we cling to material things, trying to create like that false sense of happiness. A happiness that you can see lasts only as long as the relationship continues, or as long as we possess that object. We grow attached to comfort and to the people we love. And this attachment actually blinds us. It prevents us from seeing reality as it is. It keeps us from understanding that everything in this physical world is transitory, is fleeting, impermanent, right? It is very important that we begin to reflect deeply on this issue, that we learn to observe how every attachment that we have is actually rooted in fear, not in love, in fear. We become attached to many things, and then we live in our inner hell, tortured by the fear of losing these things, of losing that person. We fear losing our possessions. We fear losing our partner. We fear losing the people we love, our pets, whatever. And all of this happens because we don't truly understand. We not ever accept the reality of life and death, how fleeting existence is. We fail to understand that in truth, death doesn't exist either. A father or mother, for example, becomes so attached to their child that even after the child has grown up, they continue to interfere in their life, trying to control their decisions, choosing what they should study or whom they should marry. And actually, that is attachment. In the same way, we become attached to a partner. And then we live in constant anxiety, afraid of losing that person, afraid of betrayal. And through such attachment, all kinds of toxic relationships, unhealthy relationships are created. And all the root of this is attachment, and the root of attachment, fear. When we finally understand that every attachment hides a fear, and that behind that fear is a psychological defect, one that fears losing whatever brings us pleasure, comfort, or security, then we begin to see clearly. We start to reflect, what is the fear behind this attachment? And which defect sustains that fear? And when we eliminate the defects through the work of psychological death, we actually free ourselves, not only from the fear, but also from the attachment itself. And only in that freedom we recover our true capacity to love. Because true love is based not on fear, not in clinging, but in respect and liberty, not possession. For example, I discover that I'm attached to my partner, for example, because the thought of losing him makes me suffer. So I ask myself, who is that is there suffering? Then if I truly judge myself, I'm going to see that inside of me I am afraid of losing some companion. I am afraid of losing someone that gives me emotional pleasure, sexual pleasure, that gives me provides me, I don't know, a certain economical security and status in the society and so on. Now we are going to find out that what we call love is not at all, it's just some interests, it's our fears that are there for those psychological defects. If we reflect on that, we see that it's our ego who is actually suffering by the thought of losing our partner or a mother or a house or a car or a children or anything to which we are attached. And with great attachment, we realize that behind that we actually call love, there are egoic interests. And that is fear, that is attachment. And we discover then that we do not yet know how to truly love because only consciousness can love from respect and freedom. And that in order to love authentically, all those conditionings, all those interests, all those fears, all that attachment must die. And that way, we are going to start learning to truly love, which is something actually beautiful. It is freedom for us, for the other people, and a higher understanding of the reality of all things and of all souls. So, the issue of attachment is extremely serious because it can delay or even completely paralyze our self realization if we don't understand this thing deeply. For that reason, this lecture is so important that we reflect on this. Attachment to our ego prevent us from advancing toward the liberation and awakening of our consciousness. Attachment to our comfort and the fear of losing, for example, our social or our economic position can become a terrible obstacle when we try to, for example, establish a permanent center of gravity around our inner work, and the attachment that we create towards our family members and the fears that sustain this attachment often prevent us from performing any sacrificial work for humanity. Yeah, while also making it impossible for us to pass the initiatory trials within ourselves. Whenever our family or anything we are attached to weighs more than our commitment to the work of our being, then there is no possibility of passing any trial. And there are 4 trials that every student must face repeatedly in this work. And these are the trials of air, of fire, of water, and of earth. And actually, no one can pass the trials of air if they still have attachments. In the astral world, for example, when we are thrown into an abyss and we scream, that scream is a clear sign of attachment. Attachment to the physical body, to material things, to our children, to anything. So the masters internally make us see this attachment by launching us from above. So we can feel the terror of losing, and that fear shows our attachment. And that's why we fall the air trials, right? Likewise, our attachment to pride, to comfort, to loss, and to the ego in general, actually causes to fail the trials of poverty, which are the earth trials. We also fail the water trials, which are trials of adaptation. and the fire trials, which are tests of anger and lust. And because of these attachments, we also fail the small daily tests that life constantly places before us in this initiatory path. But when we work on all this, when we detach ourselves from everything and from our ego, then we start advancing and we start like passing these inner trials. And if we don't do so, as a result, we are going to remain stagnated in our inner work. And well, it's important, yeah, that every one of us, in particular, in their own personal reflection, bring these things of attachment to see how actually we're trying to integrate love with this inner work. But when we attach ourselves to so many external things and internal things, in the case of our psychological family, we are actually fragmenting love. You see that when a man and a woman come together, the first thing they usually do is look for a house, right? And they fill this house with furniture, with everything, and they begin to establish roots. Soon come children, possessions, and endless responsibilities. And when we then become attached to all those comforts, we worry so much at the thought of losing them. We imagine how life would be without them. And we feel that these things define us. We don't want to discomfort us. We justify our attachments by saying that we work hard to earn them, right? And we believe that losing them would be like going backwards in life. We also worry about what others might think if we lose what we own, and all of this blinds us. We even feel ownership over the people, our children, our wife, our husband, and that attachment blinds us to the reality that everything is in life is fleeting, that we came here for a while just to make a course, just to learn something, just to develop the virtues of our souls, just to learn to truly love, but we are not doing so. So it is essential to understand this conflict between family and attachment clearly, because not doing so can completely halt our inner progress. If we become aware that every time that we buy another decoration for the house, we are actually dividing our love instead of integrating it, would begin to act differently, if we realize this. Seeking self-realization means integrating love, not fragmenting love. And if we truly really understood this, we wouldn't need to throw away our possessions or abandon our families. No, we would only need to understand why we desire them as we do. If we can do this also with our loved ones, we won't need to reject or separate from them, because understanding actually is the beginning to dissolve the attachment. And when we deeply understand this, we can achieve self-realization in a single existence. And we can move forward decisively when important choices arises in that existence. So we must remember that actually, yes, family is a duty, but we must also recognize the limits of those duties and the rights within those duties, right? Only then we can consciously integrate the real family and dissolve the psychological one. So through meditation, psychological depth, we must search for the roots of our attachments from those emotional bonds that we have created with people, possessions, beliefs also, and above all within all our ego. Only then can we attain true freedom, awaken our consciousness, and discover what love truly is. And well, that concludes today's conference. If you have any question about this topic, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comment box or to contact us directly. And as always, I invite you to our next conference where we are going to see a very interesting topic, which is transcendental meditation. And we are going to see how to reach the state of meditation known as samadhi, or illuminating void, through the koan technique. Yeah. So now, thank you very much to all of you who are there watching these lectures. Thank you very much also for sharing these lectures with others. Remember to join us in our WhatsApp or Telegram groups. Here in the description of this video, you can find the link. And to let us know if you have any concern or questions on these self-knowledge lectures. And well, thank you very much and see you the next time. Bye-bye.